Hi, everyone, and welcome to Mindfuel, where we are making mental fitness accessible to endurance athletes so you can train your brain as consciously as you train your body. Today, we're joined by my good friend, Zain Hirani, who I've had the pleasure of trying to keep up with for more than a decade now. Zain and I met in our master's program in 2014 and then used to pretty literally run into each other during early morning workouts in Regent's Park in London. And now I don't live there and he doesn't live in the city, but I continue to stand in awe from the sidelines, watching Zain continue to crush basically any goal, professionally or personally, that he touches. And we'll get on to that in a bit. But first, Zain, welcome to Mindfuel.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Great to have you. So, we start every episode asking our guests who they are before we jump into what it is that you do. So, Zain, how would a friend describe you?
I actually went through a similar exercise where I had to ask three friends how they described me about 6 months ago, and all three described the same, pretty much the same three words, some like different words but same meaning. So they all said driven, determined, and family. And yeah, I guess I would just describe myself as someone that is incredibly driven by my family, by my kids, to achieve everything I can and to try and be as best as I can at whatever I do. And yeah, I like to think that I'm hardworking, and I kind of when I get a goal in my mind, I tend to just chase after it without with
I can concur with your friend's description of you. I would absolutely agree. And that probably brings us very nicely onto your relationship with endurance sport, because I think those traits are ones that have really propelled you in that area. So, do you want to share a bit more? And for the keen among you, if you look at Zane's background, you'll see that it's full of accolades, a bike. So, we know he's keen on this. So, yeah, tell us a little bit more.
yeah. So my kids did that for me for my 40th last year. So I did the wall with all the stuff that
Very
was just
cool.
stuck around my office. So my relationship with endurance sport. So I did my first marathon when I was at university, saying I was 20 or 21 in 2006. And I thought that my hockey fitness, so I used to play hockey really seriously. I thought that my hockey fitness would take me through a marathon, and I couldn't have been more wrong. So I think the longest training run, actual run I did before that London Marathon was 7 kilometers.
7.
Uh, yeah, seven.
Okay.
Um,
For those who
and I
think in miles, that's just shy of 5 miles.
Yeah, just shy of 5 months. And and I didn't touch endurance again for years. That really traumatized me.
Really?
And then I slowly got into running whilst working in the city. So I'd run to and from the office because that was kind of the only exercise I could get. I was quite busy. I worked in banking during the financial crisis, so it was lots of early mornings, lots of late nights. So I'd do that like the 8 kilometers from Camden to the city and back again every day. And then I moved to South Africa where I got into mountain biking, and that's where some of the endurance really started. Going out for long mountain bike trails with friends out there. And when I came back, my housemate had bought a road bike, so I was like, let's buy a road bike. And then slowly everything kind of started piecing together. And after kind of hitting 30, I think I must have been 31, 32, I decided I would like to do an Ironman. Someone that I knew and I'd worked with before had done one, and I kind of said, let's give it a go and let's train for something. It also coincided with my wife being pregnant with our first, so I'd made the decision not to drink in solidarity, so I had so much time on my hands. So I did lots of training and did my first Ironman, and I just loved it. I love the process. I love the process of training. Just really, really enjoyed it.
Was an Ironman your first triathlon, or did you do some in
No,
the build up of shorter
I'd done a
distances?
couple of shorter triathlons. I'd done Olympic distances before. I did three with our mutual friend Kevin in Switzerland. And then I thought, right, I'm going to go for the full one. It was up in Bolton. Even the swim, which was on a lake, which was just covered with a film of duck poo. It was even that didn't put me off.
Hardcore Zane.
And I just swam with my mouth shut.
Wise, wise move.
And um and so yeah, and so I really fell in love with it, and I fell in love with kind of the discipline of trying to excel at three sports at the same time, and the discipline needed training. And then after that, I kind of started working with a coach who really took me to levels that I didn't even think I could get to. Then one thing after another, I felt now was the right time for me to do it. I was only getting older, and it was the best time for me to kind of achieve something that I never thought was possible for me. Sport was never a option on the table when I was growing up. It was never a career. It was kind of like you've got to get into something that makes you money, and finally I found something actually that makes me happy. And so yeah, and so I just fell in love with the sport. I also just found that it really calmed down my mind a lot as well. So that was another added benefit.
Meditation.
Yes.
It's amazing hearing that story. I actually didn't realize that your first Ironman was as late in your kind of endurance journey as it was, because I've always looked at you and thought, well, I think you could have been a professional athlete, runner or triathlete, because you've also left out the fact that you've run many sub 250 marathons now, starting to get into some ultra endurance events. So you kind of do it all. But one of the things that I love about this story too is that you really do love the process of it. And you've always been very humble about your results. And maybe that's part of the reason why, because for you, that's an amazing outcome. But actually, the passion and the joy do come more from the journey, which is something I've struggled with at times over the years. And I really admire when athletes can stay grounded in that. So, do you want to share a little
Yeah.
bit about like how that feels, or am I misinterpreting? Is the
No,
outcome
no, no,
just
no.
as
You're
important?
100% right. So for me, so like I grew up in an environment where kind of like my father didn't really know how to process his emotions at all. And for me, I'd always looked for an outlet. I kind of knew, like speaking to my brother, who's my best friend, we speak all the time. Speaking to him, always knew that the one thing we always wanted to be was not him. And I found my way of processing things as like training. And as I got older and pressures and stresses of life get more, especially once you've got kids, I found that that was my outlet. And in fact, now my wife kicks me out of the house. I haven't been for a run for a few days. But for me, that process and that discipline is what motivates me. So if I've got in my plan a 10 by 1K session on the track, I love that because for that 1K, the only thing going through my head is hitting my number. The only thing that's going through my head is kind of 200 meters left. Just keep that pace going, keep those legs turning. There's nothing else in my head. And I was kind of reading, I was reading I was reading Chris Hoy's autobiography earlier in the week, and he was talking about how he coped with 2012 and how it was just like he started working with his psychologist to take the helicopter view. So you just start going up and up and up, and you realize, and that's kind of how I feel when I'm training. I just feel like I'm just above everything else that I'm worried about, and I'm just concentrating on this one thing, and that then puts everything else into perspective. And actually, sometimes you find the solution when your mind's not thinking about it. So yeah, for me, it's the process, and it's being disciplined and sticking to that process and trusting in it even when times are hard, and then the results are a byproduct.
So, Zane, as we've talked over the years about your success and to a point your enjoyment of the sport, one of the things that's come up is about visualization and how you use that maybe consciously and unconsciously in your training and in your racing. So, I guess I'd love to open up a conversation around that and maybe start with when and how did visualization become part of your routine? And was it something that came naturally to you? Was it something that a coach or fellow athletes or some other resources kind of planted in your mind and that you actively worked to develop?
Yeah, so I think visualization, I think it developed over time for me. I think for me it was more of a coping mechanism for some of the harder sessions, or when I've got a lot of fatigue in my legs and I'm going out for a run or a bike, or when it's miserable outside and you're getting through winter training. I think that's how I've developed the visualization techniques and I guess tactics to inch myself closer to the goals that I have. And so as I got better and I started achieve like getting faster, I would start thinking about things like qualifying for Kona or getting my good for age place in the London Marathon, and um, I'd start to visualize kind of what that means, not just the moments of it happening, kind of like what does that mean for me? Like why, firstly, why do I want it? Right. So for me, the London Marathon good for age is because it's the best day of my year, to be honest with you. Like London Marathon is absolutely incredible. Atmosphere, people, the volume, the noise, just it's something that I want to do over and over again. And so keeping that place is really important to me. So that's what I visualize as I've got older and my kids have grown up and seen me doing it. They're like, Daddy, when can we do it with you? And I'm like, right, well, I've got another 10 years of getting my place before I can do one with my eldest. And that's kind of the visualization of that goal in the end, and things that I think about when I'm on the track or when it's cold in the morning. But thinking about Ironman and when I was competing really hard, I was training 30 hours a week at the peak, and I think average, the ones where I was doing it really seriously, was probably about 16, 17 hours a week. And there are moments in there where you're thinking, I can just call it easy on this session, or I can just cut the bike off after 2 hours. And for me, it was always kind of just it's always a what if I don't achieve that goal? Would those 2 hours have made the difference? And I'm a bit of a doomsday planner. My first job out of university was in investment banking. I moved straight into the restructuring and turnaround team during the financial crisis. So I am a
Worst
trained
case
doomsday
scenario.
planner. Yeah, I always look at the worst case scenario. And I think for me, it's about there is that element of understanding, do I not want to do that session or cut it early because I just can't be bothered? Or is my body trying to tell me something? So once you figure that out, you can make the right decision. But when I'm ill or injured and I have to cut something short, I don't put any pressure on myself. But when it's just kind of laziness, or you know what, I just don't want to do it today, there is that kind of goal that I want to achieve, and how would I feel at the end of that race if I miss out by one place? When I was at Ironman Wales, the last 5-10K of the run, the top 5 men in the kind of non-pro league, we were all pretty much within 20 meters of each other. And you're trying to find that pace in your legs, and you're trying to hold someone off when you're going around a U-bend, and you're counting the seconds on a U-turn as you see them coming the other way. So you're kind of saying, like, how much have I got to play with? In those moments, those little things in your training begin to really count. And for me, visualizing kind of that moment through my training is a really good tool.
And when you say that moment, is it crossing the finish line, or is it I'm at the bottom of my barrel of energy and I've got 3K left to go? How am I going to respond? Talk us through that.
Yeah, so it's both. It's both. So it's visualizing the feeling of achieving what you want to achieve, not necessarily crossing the finish line, but it's visualizing that feeling once you've crossed that finish line and you can tick the box of saying, I did what I came here to do, and going away from a race with no regrets. Then also in my process, I visualize the stuff that can go wrong, and the stuff and the moments I may go through in the peaks and troughs of a race. So Ironman Wales in 2022, I've got power pedals. I didn't take the charger for my power pedals, went out on a test ride, and they died. And so I was riding to heart rate for the whole bike. I didn't have any power on my pedals, and I didn't have any power information coming to my Garmin. That I just had to deal with it. I mean, in my head I've said to me, right, what if my power meter fails? What am I going to do? I've visualized that moment and how I'm going to deal with that moment and that realization, and then how I'm going to solve that problem going forward, because there's no point in panicking. Once I came out of the swim and I picked up my bike, my tire was blown. And I had to go into the mechanic tent. Luckily, it blew there. So in my head, I'm thinking, yes,
Right.
I have visualized mechanical errors through the race, never in transition, but this is actually the best place for it to happen because there's a
100%.
mechanic right there. So in my head, I've already gone through the scenarios and what could possibly happen. I visualize kind of that wall that you're going to hit after halfway through the marathon. And halfway through the marathon and an Ironman, generally your stomach's had enough. Like of taking the fuel, and taking the fuel is actually a challenge in itself. And you're thinking to yourself, "Right, what am I going to do at that moment when I cannot fathom another gel? I am going to stop and I'm going to have 2 glasses of Coke at the aid station." And that doesn't matter, because what matters is that I've got the energy to continue going, and that's going to be my get out if I cannot stomach another gel. And so I visualized that moment in my head pre-race. I visualized going up to that aid station. I visualized my competitor coming past me and thinking, I don't care. I will have my drink because I know I can catch up, and I know I'll be better for having that moment. So in my head, in my prep, is kind of that all of those things go through my mind. And I actually found that I remember doing my first Ironman in Bolton, all of those things went through my mind the night before the race, and I didn't sleep. I think I slept like an hour and a half.
Okay, I want to ask you about this. Like, where's the borderline between visualizing and it being productive and ruminating and it causing anxiety, distraction, almost leading you to manifest the things that could happen that you don't want to happen?
So I think firstly it just comes with experience. You realize the things that can go wrong and will go wrong every time, or the moments you are going to face challenges every time. It comes to planning. So when I started planning for those things, I said, right, what if my nutrition bottle drops off the back of my bike? I remember thinking that the night before Bolton. The first thing I did when I got to transition was got my Allen key out and tightened all my bolts on my thing behind. Now that's done way in advance. So those moments, I've already planned for them before. Do I have the right equipment? Is my equipment in good condition? How are my cleats? Try and minimize, and there's none of the worry anymore. So even with the marathon, I know kind of I've got my 6 gels. I'm absolutely fine. That's pretty much all I need. That and my trainers. And if I've forgotten my shorts and I have to run in my boxers, shame for everyone else.
All you need is the number. Everything else is
Exactly.
superfluous.
Yeah, but I think it comes with kind of some race experience, but also then talking to people that have done races.
So Zane, once you get to that start line in the, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes, you're in that corral, there's lots of that energy going. What's going through your brain then?
That is a really good question. That's changed a lot over the years. What used to go through my brain was the time you're going to get, right? Especially in a marathon, is the time you're going to get. What goes through my brain now is, what's my game plan? Don't let adrenaline change your game plan. I remember one of my it's actually my fastest marathon, but I finished and I opened my WhatsApp, and on my WhatsApp group with all my triathlon friends, they were saying, "Oh, he's gone out too fast. He's gone out too fast." I had gone out too fast. I still PB'd, but I had gone out way too fast. And now I've kind of got a game plan for the whole race rather than a game plan for the first half and then just push through, which is how I used to do it. On an Ironman, I am so scared of open water swimming, and it's a natural thing, and I think a lot of people suffer with it. So on the start of an Ironman, actually, I think that's quite a good thing to have, because the only thing I'm concentrating on when I start an Ironman is when I get my head underwater, breathe out. Just breathe out. Don't hold your breath in, because that's when the panic starts. And so that's actually just a really good thing. And I've just met people at the start of swim races who are nervous, and you can see the nerves on their face going into the swim. And I said, just concentrate on breathing out. Just you're blowing your bubbles. It's kind of like just literally what the teachers tell my kids at swimming school. Is look, if they're doing front crawls, I want to see the bubbles. I want to see the bubbles. And once you start thinking of that, once you actually just go into those small pieces of
Mm.
your form of the technique, which actually goes really quick. And when I did Ironman Wales, it was an open water swim, and there were probably about 6 foot swells. It was pretty bad.
Brutal.
And I did about the first 200 meters of the swim, stop start, swallowed quite a lot of water. And in my head, I just thought, I don't need to do this. I've done the hard work. I can go sit on the beach for the rest of the day, watch everyone else, and I would be equally happy. And
Mm.
I looked up and I saw the next buoy. I said, just try and get to that buoy. And I just put my head down in the water and took a deep breath, and I saw myself going around that buoy. Then I very quickly afterwards, I felt myself going around that buoy. Then I said to myself, where's the next buoy? And I looked at that one and I said, right, we're going to get to that one. And then it was just buoy by buoy by buoy. And you get through it. And
That's
it's a similar
powerful.
thing on the
Breaking it
run.
down like
Yeah,
that, it's the only way, especially in these huge races.
absolutely. And I do a similar thing on the run. On the run, there's that person ahead of me. I am going to catch them by the next kilometer. I'm not going to sprint now and catch up with them, but by the next kilometer mark, I'm going to be on their tail. And so what does that mean for me? That just means an extra cadence every minute. That's just an extra step, an extra meter every minute. That is all it's going to take. And I start breaking things down into those little chunks. But on the start line, it depends on the race, but it's now just what's your game plan? Stick to your game plan, no one else's.
Yes.
But
You've done the
that
work.
also
As
comes
you
with a
said,
trust.
like 90% of the journey in all of these races is all of the training. Your body will use the training appropriately if you guide it and keep focused on, I've done it, now let's execute. Like, body, come on, you know what to do.
Your body, you've done the work, and your body knows how to react to situations as well. And I remember coming back from one of the London marathons a few years ago, and my kids saying, "Did you win?" And I was like, "No, I didn't win." And in my head, that actually triggered, like, he was obviously thinking, "What? Why are you doing it if you're not going to win?" And I'm going and saying, "Actually, the only person I'm rating is myself." And I said to him, "Yeah, actually, I'm not there to start the race quicker than everyone else around me. I'm there to race for myself and achieve what I want to achieve." And over time, I've come to the really depressing conclusion, but I'm happy with it now. I'm comfortable with it, that I'm not going to match my PB for a marathon, probably ever again. But for me, my personal best is what I can do on that day at that time. Like Berlin Marathon earlier this year in September, I went in with an injury. In my head, I was like, I'm going to be really happy with a sub 3, like really happy. And I said, what do I need to do a sub 3? I said, right, this is kind of the pace that I need to set out on. And if the weather and the heat and everything gets to me, or the injury gets to me, then I can nurse it back. But this is a pace that I think I can keep up without straining myself too much. And I thought about it, I planned it, and it was a lot slower than I normally go out on, but it worked. And I was like, I came out, and that's why that was the best marathon I've ever done. Beat my PB because actually I stuck to my game plan, and I thoroughly enjoyed it as well. There was no wall, there was no pain, there was nothing. I didn't cramp. I loved it. And so for me, like on the start line, visualizing myself against me and what I need to do to achieve what I want to achieve on that day is super important.
I
Exactly.
want to dive into one other specific experience I know that you've had in racing, which was a pretty horrific bike crash in the middle of an Ironman. So, if you can quickly summarize what happened there, but what I really want to understand is, had you ever spent time visualizing what would happen with a crash? And you had a remarkable performance afterward, despite some pretty serious injuries. What were you doing mentally to get yourself to that finish line?
Yeah. So in Ironman Victoria Gasteiz,
And for those who don't know, that's in northern Spain,
northern
if I'm not
Spain,
mistaken.
Basque Country, and it's surrounded by mountains, but the race is in a valley, and the swim is it's clear water, and it's so flat. It's unbelievable. It's a lake in the mountains, and then the bike ride is really flat, but it's beautiful, beautiful scenery. So what happened was I came out of the swim, got onto my bike, started the ride, and there's a 90-degree turn or at the bottom of a hill. And as I was coming up to taking the turn, one of the race motorbikes with one of the officials came in and took my line. And then the next line next to me, there was someone in that line. And so I didn't have time to adjust properly. And I fell into a ditch on the other side. And my Garmin fell off my bike. And so I spent quite a lot of time putting my nutrition back together and checking everything was all right, getting my chain back on. and I was back on my bike. And I felt all right on the bike. Something hurt, but I just thought, you know what, it's just the impact of falling into that ditch. Everything's all right. I kind of could still put good power out on my legs, and I felt okay. But then when the run started, I was in a lot of pain. Kind of almost every time I put my foot down, my I felt pain in my chest and kind of up through into my shoulder. And after the race, I went for an X-ray and I'd broken two ribs. And I finished the race with that. And
In heroic time, might I
yeah,
add.
I think it was like a 9 hour Ironman in the heat. And yeah, so to your question, I didn't really visualize a crash. I visualized mechanicals. I visualized kind of slipping or falling or having a fall, but I hadn't visualized injuring myself, kind of a contact injury rather than a muscle pull or a strain. I hadn't visualized that. There's an element of adrenaline taking you through it. But once I got to the run, I had to adjust my strategy for the pain, but also I was quite struggling to get anything solid down as well. So on the bike, I was struggling to get solid food down on the bike, and I started consuming gels on the bike, which I normally don't do. I normally save all my gels for the run, and I'll eat something a bit more solid on the bike. So on the run, I was hurting. I really didn't want to have any more gels, and I had to kind of make in-flight changes. And again, I wanted to qualify for Kona. So this was kind of like really my first moment where I had to make decisions on the fly for a long period of time, for 3 hours for the marathon. I kind of took two strategies then. I kind of took treated it like a fartlek session. So I kind of did intervals and then slower pace. So I kind of went at race pace, or a bit over race pace that I wanted, and then really slowed it down just to let my body recover a little bit. And then also have my mum there watching and one of her friends. And so just getting to the point where I knew she was going to be became kind of like my next goal. I know she's there watching. And also, I really didn't want her to worry about me and seeing me in pain. So I was like, right, when I get there, need to be in good form. I don't want her to worry. So that kind of what was going through my head. And I was kind of visualizing that moment. Actually, one of my favorite Ironman photos is crossing that line, because I just instinctively just let out this big roar, and I just got,
I
and they've got the
imagine
photo of
true
it.
triumph.
I think from talking about visualization, I think in the moment it was less visualization. It was more just kind of what are the tactics that are going to get me through this moment. But afterwards, I used that to start visualizing and to start thinking about how does the environment around me affect my race outcome, and also just start asking the question of myself, what of those things can I control and what can I not? I couldn't control that moment. And so for me going into the next race, I was like, there is no point in me worrying about that exact scenario happening. But what I can control is in my training is finding more steep descents into a corner. And luckily where I live, I've got loads of those. So I started thinking about kind of what is within my sphere of influence and what's outside of my influence. And so I talked to my coach and I said, right, for the next one, these are the kind of things I'd like to do. So it's about really, for me, controlling what I can control and not thinking about the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk a lot about that at Mindfuel. Controlling the controllables is one of the best kind of mindset, I don't even want to call it tricks, approaches to have.
And I
So,
think in general life, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
I mean, even I say to my son, I say, like, you can't control what your sister says to you. That you've got no control over that. The only thing you'll control of is your reaction. So how are you going to react? And then you just deal with that.
Everything we talk about with sport really is just an analogy to life more broadly.
And it's made me such a better person. Like, especially endurance sport, it's like it is a metaphor for life, because life is a marathon, right? It's a long time. So even like last year when I kind of lost my job or didn't have work, and I was kind of panicking and worrying, I kind of just went back into endurance mode. I was like, no, this is not a sprint. Like in 5 years time, got a great job, I'm not going to be thinking about these 3 months where I didn't have work. And so endurance and that journey has kind of permeated through, the lessons have permeated through life.
Nice thing to end on. So thank you,
Yeah.
Zain.
No, thank
This has
you.
been a really fun conversation. And if people want to get in touch with you and learn more about your journey or follow along what you're doing, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Instagram, email, yeah, LinkedIn, whatever you want. You can find me on most of those and drop me a message.
Awesome. Well, we'll put all of that on our website as always. And Zane, just again, thank you so much for joining us and for your wisdom. If this resonated with you all, please like our video, subscribe to our channel. And if you have any follow up comments or questions, you can post those in the comments or email connect@mindfuel.fit. And if you haven't already, head over to our website, mindfuel.fit, to subscribe to our email and check out the other resources that we have posted there. Thanks again, everyone, and happy and healthy training. Bye.
Thanks for having me.